Dr. Emily Anderson rubbed her tired eyes, staring at the quantum sonar readouts that had kept her awake for the past 36 hours. The U.S. Nautilus's state-of-the-art sensors were picking up something that defied everything she knew about deep-sea physics. "Captain, I need you to see this." Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd just witnessed the impossible. Captain Michael Hayes, a 20-year veteran of the Navy's Deep-Sea Research Division, leaned over her shoulder, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the monitors. "Talk to me, Anderson. What am I looking at?" "These crystalline structures we've been tracking. They're moving against the currents at depths where our best submarines can barely function, and they're doing it without creating any cavitation." She pulled up a 3D rendering of the objects. The energy signatures suggest they're artificial, but they're operating at pressures that should crush any known material. Hayes frowned, his military training warring with what the data was telling him. Could it be a sensor malfunction? That's what I thought at first. Emily pulled up simultaneous readings from 3 different tracking systems, but we're getting the same results across all arrays. And sir, she lowered her voice, we're not the only ones seeing them. She brought up encrypted communications from British, French, and Japanese submarines, all reporting similar anomalies in their sectors. The Quantum Sonar Project, meant to revolutionize underwater detection, had inadvertently discovered something far more significant. Deep beneath them, unaware their cover was slowly being compromised, the Hydroscipien observation vessel Luminous Depth maintained its surveillance position. First Scout Sextal studied the human vessel above with growing concern. These surface dwellers, she communicated through bioluminescent patterns to her crew. Their detection capabilities have evolved far beyond our projections. They're using quantum principles we believed impossible for non-aquatic species to harness. Her second-in-command, Krivon, pulsed with skepticism. Perhaps they've simply discovered how to track our weak signatures. It doesn't mean they understand what they're seeing. A sudden shift in the human vessel's position made them all pulse with alarm. The massive submarine above them had adjusted its depth with a precision that rivaled their own bioships. "They're compensating for the thermocline shift," Sextal observed, her patterns showing both concern and admiration. "Look at their response time. Those aren't automated systems. They're anticipating the changes." The Hydroscipiens had chosen Earth for observation precisely because it was primarily a water world, expecting to find primitive aquatic life forms at best. The discovery of an advanced civilization wasn't surprising, but finding one that originated on land and yet showed such mastery of the deep had shaken their fundamental assumptions about evolutionary progression. Back aboard the Nautilus, Emily's systems lit up with new data. "Captain, the structures are moving again, but this time, there's something different." She enhanced the resolution, revealing complex patterns of energy that reminded her of neural activity. "They're not just machines. I think they're alive." Hayes immediately grasped the implications. "Get me a secure line to SUBMARCOM." And Anderson, he placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Not a word of this to anyone else. If you're right about what we're seeing, the whole game just changed." As Emily prepared the data transmission, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. Humanity had spent centuries mastering the oceans, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the crushing depths. Now it seemed they weren't alone in those dark waters. The quantum sonar pinged again, its revolutionary technology pulling back the veil on a mystery that had been swooning beneath them all along. In the depths of Earth's oceans, 2 civilizations were about to collide, and neither was prepared for what the other could do. Commander Jack Reynolds stood at the con of the U.S. Barracuda, his expression granite as he watched the sonar displays. 3 weeks of tracking what his crew had nicknamed the Phantoms had led them to this moment, deep in the Philippine Trench. Con. Sonar. Multiple contacts. Bearing 095. Depth 22,000 feet. Chief Sarah Miller's voice crackled through the internal comm. "Sir, they're moving in a formation I've never seen before." Reynolds leaned into the periscope display. though at this depth it was useless for anything but habit. The quantum imaging system, newly installed after Dr. Anderson's discovery, painted a different picture. What they were following wasn't Russian, Chinese, or anything else in humanity's arsenal. XO, bring us to full stop. Silent running. Reynolds turned to his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander David Foster. Let's see what our friends do when we're not chasing them. The massive submarine settled into the darkness, its advanced propulsion system allowing it to hover with unprecedented precision. Below them, the Hydrosepian observation team was reaching a critical decision point. First Scout Dixtal. The surface dwellers have stopped pursuing. Kravan's bioluminescent patterns showed agitation. They're demonstrating tactical awareness that shouldn't be possible at these depths. Their vessel's control rivals our own. Textal studied the human submarine through the crystalline walls of their bioship. The vessel above them had been tracking them for days, displaying capabilities that violated everything they knew about non-aquatic species limitations. Begin the emergence protocol, she commanded, her patterns resolute. We've gathered enough data. These humans have proven. Her orders were cut short as alarms pulsed through their ship's living tissues. Above them, the Barracuda had deployed something new. Sensor net active, Commander, Miller reported, her voice tense with excitement. Web pattern complete. Whatever these things are, they're caught in it. Reynolds watched as the experimental quantum mesh, a network of sophisticated sensors designed to create a three-dimensional map of everything within its range, illuminated their quarry. The images it returned stopped conversations mid-sentence throughout the command center. Mother of God, Foster whispered. The vessels below them were like nothing they'd ever seen. Crystalline structures that seemed to phase between solid and liquid states, organic technology that pulsed with internal light. And inside them, movement, intelligence. In their bioship, Dixtal realized their mistake. The humans hadn't just been tracking them. They'd been herding them into this trap. A trap that shouldn't have been possible with their level of technology. Emergency phase shift, she commanded, but the quantum mesh had already entangled with their ship's crystalline matrix. Their advanced technology, designed to move through water like living mercury, was now trapped by principles they thought humans couldn't possibly understand. Sir, Miller's voice was steady despite the unprecedented situation. The largest contact is changing. I think they're trying to communicate. Reynolds made a decision that would change human history. Open frequencies across all spectrums. Let's see if they want to talk. The Hydrosepians, realizing their cover was irreparably blown, initiated their first contact protocols. Their bioship's exterior transformed into a brilliant display of light patterns, their natural form of communication. Chief Miller, are you recording this? Reynolds asked, watching the hypnotic display. Every byte, sir. Computers already working on pattern recognition. It's definitely a language. The Barracuda's crew watched in awe as the alien vessels began a choreographed dance of light and motion. Their advanced sensor net, designed to trap and study unknown submarines, had instead caught something far more extraordinary. XO, Reynolds said quietly, draft a message to SUBBAMARCOM, Priority Ultra. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I believe we just made first contact with a civilization that thought they were studying us, and I don't think they're very happy about being caught. In the depths of the Philippine Trench, humanity's mastery of the deep ocean had just reshaped the galaxy's understanding of what surface-dwelling species could achieve. The observer's mistake was about to become a first contact that neither species had properly prepared for. Lieutenant Commander Ashley Martinez stood before the gathered Hydrosepian delegation aboard the U.S. Gerald R. Ford, her experimental deep-sea rescue submersible gleaming behind her. The aliens' environmental suits, crystalline structures that somehow maintained their aquatic pressure requirements, cast rippling shadows across the carrier's deck. The DSV Artemis can reach depths of 30,000 feet, she explained, noting the dismissive bioluminescent patterns flickering between the observers. And yes, we're aware that your bioships can go deeper. The lead Hydrosapian observer, who had taken the human name Ambassador Azure, pulsed with what their cultural attaches had identified as amusement. Your achievement is admirable for surface dwellers. However, the crushing pressures at such depths require more than mere metal shells. Martinez smiled, the kind of smile that had earned her the call sign Shark during her rescue pilot days. Then perhaps a demonstration is in order. 30 minutes later, the Artemis hung suspended in the waters of the Mariana Trench's outer edge, with 3 Hydrosapian bioships maintaining formation around it. Their crystalline hulls shifted and flowed like living mercury, a display meant to intimidate. Initiating descent, Martinez announced over the comm. Inside the Artemis's advanced cockpit, holographic displays showed real-time structural integrity data. Ambassador, try to keep up. She engaged the submersible's revolutionary propulsion system. Instead of fighting the crushing currents at these depths, the Artemis used them, riding the underwater flows like a bird soaring through thermals. The Hydrosapians' bioships followed, their own movements clearly designed to showcase their superior agility. Approaching the canyon, Martinez's second pilot, Lieutenant Tom "Hotshot" Rodriguez, called out. The Challenger Deep Canyon system loomed before them, a maze of underwater cliffs and sudden pressure changes that had claimed countless research vessels. Ambassador Azure's voice came through the comm, translated by their new quantum interface. Perhaps we should establish safety parameters for. Martinez had already thrown the Artemis into a dive, plunging into the canyon's narrowest section. The submersible's quantum field generators, technology that had the Hydrosapians buzzing with disbelief, adjusted instantly to the pressure changes. That's impossible, one of the Hydrosapian scientists broadcast. The pressure differentials alone should tear us apart. Rodriguez grinned as Martinez threaded the Artemis through a series of tight turns. You folks might want to take notes. Above them, aboard the Ford, Admiral Richardson watched the feed with the rest of the 7th Fleet's command staff. Alongside them, the Hydrosapian High Council's representatives were showing clear signs of agitation. Your vessel's performance exceeds our theoretical models for non-organic deep-sea navigation, the Hydrosapian chief scientist admitted, their patterns displaying what humans were learning to read as profound confusion. Richardson allowed himself a small smile. Lieutenant Commander Martinez helped design the Artemis's navigation systems based on her experiences during deep-sea rescue operations. Sometimes practical experience trumps theoretical models. Deep in the canyon, Martinez was proving that point. The Artemis spun through a series of maneuvers that had the Hydrosapian bioships struggling to match its precision. Their organic technology, while incredibly advanced, hadn't been pushed to adapt like human engineering had been. Final approach, Martinez announced, guiding the Artemis toward a narrow crevice. This is where we usually find trapped submarines. She activated the vessel's full sensor array, mapping the entire canyon system in seconds. And this is how we save them. The Artemis transformed, panels shifting to reveal rescue equipment that doubled as research tools. The Hydrosapians watched in stunned silence as Martinez demonstrated deep-sea rescue techniques that their civilization, with all its natural advantages, had never needed to develop. Perhaps, Ambassador Azure transmitted finally, their patterns showing a new respect. We have made incorrect assumptions about the relationship between evolutionary origin and technological achievement. Martinez guided the Artemis back to formation, its performance having turned what was meant to be a polite demonstration into a statement about humanity's capabilities. Ambassador, with all due respect, you haven't seen anything yet. The 7th Fleet is about to begin its deep-water exercises. Would you care to observe? The Hydrosapians were about to learn that humanity's mastery of the deep wasn't just about technology. It was about necessity, determination, and the relentless drive to conquer environments they had no natural right to survive in. Admiral James Deep Blue Thompson stood in the Joint Naval Command Center, watching satellite feeds of hydrosapian bioships surfacing across Earth's oceans. War Master Vixnil's holographic form floated above the tactical table, its crystalline environment suit refracting light across the room's tense occupants. "Your species has impressed us." The War Master's translated voice carried an edge that set Thompson's teeth on edge. But impressive parlor tricks with rescue vessels are not the same as true mastery of the depths. Thompson, a veteran of countless underwater crises, kept his voice level. "With respect, War Master, we've been exploring these oceans since before we had electricity. Every inch of progress was paid for in human lives. Then you won't object to a simple challenge." Vixnil's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what humans were learning to recognize as aggressive confidence. "A deep-sea recovery operation. Your best against ours." The room erupted in murmured discussions. Thompson raised his hand for silence. "What exactly are you proposing?" 6 objects, placed at varying depths in the Pacific's most treacherous zones. Some in pressure zones that would crush your conventional submarines. Some in volcanic vents where even our bioships struggle. The first team to recover all their assigned targets claims victory. And the stakes. Thompson knew there had to be more. The War Master's patterns shifted to a deep, pulsing blue. "Exclusive rights to Earth's deep-sea resources and research zones. If you win, we acknowledge human sovereignty over Earth's oceans and share our deep-sea technology. If we win, we establish permanent research bases in your waters." In the back of the room, Mike "Mad Dog" Davidson shifted uncomfortably. The maverick ROV designer had been brought in as a consultant after his radical designs caught the Navy's attention. "Admiral, they're baiting us. They've seen our best ships, but we haven't seen theirs." Thompson nodded slightly. The Hydrosapians had been careful to only show their observation vessels, not their military or recovery craft. "And if we refuse, then we'll know humanity's achievements are limited to simple rescue operations and basic exploration." Vixnil's patterns showed what could only be described as a smirk. "Perhaps we overestimated your species' capabilities." Davidson stepped forward, his civilian status allowing him to speak more freely. "Those simple rescue operations have saved thousands of lives in conditions your people have never had to face. You evolved to handle pressure. We evolved to overcome it." Thompson watched the War Master's reaction carefully. There was something in the alien's posture, a tension that suggested this challenge wasn't merely about proving superiority. "Give us 12 hours to confer with our allies," Thompson said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make unilaterally." After the Hydrosapians disconnected, Davidson exploded. "They're playing us. They got to know about the Leviathan project. Our deep-sea capabilities are about to take a quantum leap, but it's not ready." "How close are you?" Thompson interrupted. Davidson ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "The prototype's built, but the integration systems are untested. Chief Engineer Wilson has some theories about adapting deep-sea creature mechanics, but get her up here." Thompson turned to his staff. "Contact every naval power with deep-sea capabilities. I want their best personnel and equipment ready to mobilize." He paused, studying the global map showing Hydrosapian vessel positions. "And get me everything we have on underwater volcanic activity in the Pacific." They chose that setting for a reason. As the room burst into action, Davidson lingered. "Sir, what if the Leviathan isn't ready? What if we fail?" Thompson's expression hardened. "Then we fail doing what humanity does best, pushing beyond our limits, adapting to impossible challenges, and proving that evolution isn't destiny. But first," he smiled grimly, "we're going to show them why you don't challenge a species that turned the most hostile 70% of their planet into a highway." In orbit, unbeknownst to both sides, automated sensors recorded a sudden increase in deep-sea thermal activity. The challenge arena was about to become more dangerous than either species had planned for. The Leviathan's hangar at the Naval Underwater Research Center hummed with activity as Chief Engineer Rebecca "Wrench" Wilson hung precariously from a maintenance gantry. her hands deep in the vessel's experimental transformation mechanism. The biomimetic joints are fighting the pressure compensation system. She called down to Davidson, who was frantically recalibrating equations on his tablet. "We copied the wrong animal." "What do you mean we copied the wrong?" Davidson's question was cut short as Admiral Thompson strode into the hangar, followed by a delegation of international naval officers. "Please tell me that thing can dive," Thompson said, eyeing the massive shape of the Leviathan. Its hull gleamed with an experimental metamaterial that seemed to drink in the light. Wilson dropped from the gantry, wiping grease from her hands. "It can dive, sir. But staying intact past 20,000 feet, that's another story." She pulled up a holographic display of the vessel's internal structure. "We based our transformation systems on sperm whales, but their depth range isn't enough for what we need." "We don't have time to start over," Davidson interjected, but Wilson was already shaking her head. "We don't need to. Look at this." She switched the display to show footage of a much smaller deep-sea creature, the Hadal snailfish. Lives in the deepest trenches, handles pressure changes that would crush a conventional submarine. Its cells produce special chemicals that— "English, Wilson," Thompson interrupted. "We can adapt the Leviathan's pressure compensation system to work like the snailfish's cells. Instead of fighting the pressure, we let the hull flex and adjust, just like living tissue." As if to punctuate her point, a Hydrocypian bioship surfaced in the bay outside, its crystalline structure flowing like liquid metal. The assembled officers watched as it transformed, adapting to the surface pressure with obvious ease. "They're showing off," Davidson growled. "They're scared," Wilson corrected, surprising everyone. "Look at their hull structure. It's rigid in all the wrong places. They evolved to handle steady pressure at depth, but rapid pressure changes, that's where we have the advantage." She brought up new schematics, showing the Leviathan's revolutionary design. "Their bioships are amazing at depth, but they're like deep-sea fish brought to the surface. They need time to adjust. We're building something that can move between pressure zones as easily as walking through a door." Thompson studied the designs, his expression thoughtful. "How fast can you implement these changes?" 6 hours for the primary systems, Wilson said confidently. "The real question is whether our pilot can handle it." "I can handle it," a new voice said. Lieutenant Commander Martinez stepped from the shadows where she'd been studying the Leviathan. "The Artemis uses a simplified version of these principles. This is just scaling up." Davidson started to object, but Wilson cut him off. "She's right. The Artemis proved the concept. The Leviathan just takes it to the next level." Outside, the Hydrocypian vessel performed another transformation, this one clearly meant to intimidate. Thompson watched it with newfound understanding. "They think they're dealing with simple submersibles," he mused. "They have no idea we've learned to adapt faster than evolution itself." He turned to the international delegation. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've found our edge." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Wilson and her team implemented the snailfish-inspired changes, while Martinez ran simulation after simulation in the advanced pilot pod. The Leviathan's hull began to take on a new character, its surface rippling slightly under the lights like the skin of a living creature. As the final modifications were completed, Davidson found Wilson staring at their creation, having second thoughts. She shook her head, "Just thinking about how far we've come. Humans weren't meant to survive at these depths, so we changed the rules. We built machines that could adapt faster than biology. And if it's not enough." Wilson smiled, patting the Leviathan's hull. "Then we'll adapt again. It's what we do best." In the depths of the Pacific, the Hydrocypians were preparing their champion vessels, unaware that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their relentless drive to overcome their own limitations. Structural integrity at 82% and holding. Martinez announced from the Leviathan's control pod, her voice steady despite the groaning sounds emanating from the hull. At 8,000 feet, the experimental vessel was already pushing boundaries that would make conventional submarines implode. Bioships 1 and 2 have retrieved their first targets, Rodriguez reported from the sensor station. Through the quantum imaging system, they could see the Hydrocypian vessels moving with fluid grace, their crystalline structures perfectly adapted to the crushing depths. Status on the transformation system. Davidson's voice crackled through the comm from the surface support ship. Martinez initiated the first metamorphosis sequence. The Leviathan's hull began to shift, plates realigning like scales on a fish. System responding, but a violent shudder ran through the vessel. Warning lights flooded the cabin. Primary transformation circuit failing. In the support ship's control room, Wilson's hands flew across her console. The pressure's affecting the neural interface faster than we calculated. The snailfish adaptation isn't distributing the load properly. Abort the dive, Thompson ordered. We can't risk. No. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. The Hydrocypians are watching. If we surface now, everything we've worked for is lost. She fought with the controls as the Leviathan continued to descend. Wilson, what if we reverse the pressure distribution? That's insane, Davidson interjected. The hull wasn't designed to. The snailfish doesn't fight the pressure, Wilson muttered, suddenly understanding. It channels it. Martinez, reroute power from the resistance systems to the flow matrices. Don't fight the depth. Use it. Martinez's fingers danced across the neural interface. The Leviathan's groaning changed pitch, becoming something almost musical. The warning lights began to fade. Structural integrity stabilizing at 91%. Rodriguez reported, disbelief evident in his voice. Whatever you just did, it's working. The Leviathan's hull now moved like liquid metal, eerily similar to the Hydrocypian bioships. But where their vessels fought to maintain rigid internal structures, the human ship flowed with the pressure gradients, turning the crushing depths into an advantage. Target 1 located, Martinez announced, guiding them toward a deep-sea thermal vent where the first recovery beacon pulsed. Initiating collection sequence. The Hydrocypian observers watched in stunned silence as the Leviathan transformed again, extending collection arms that moved with impossible precision. The recovery pod, designed using Wilson's reversed pressure principles, secured the target without disturbing the superheated waters around it. Impossible, one of the Hydrocypian scientists transmitted. Their hull configuration violates every principle of deep-sea engineering. Because we wrote new principles, Wilson replied through the comm. She was monitoring the Leviathan systems with fierce pride. Life finds a way, but engineers, we make our own ways. The competition became a dance of innovation versus evolution. The Hydrocypian bioships were faster in open water, but the Leviathan's ability to rapidly adapt to changing pressure zones gave it an edge in the complex recovery zones. Target 2 acquired, Martinez reported, her confidence growing with each successful transformation. Moving to coordinates 4, she stopped mid-sentence. The quantum imaging system was showing something strange in the thermal layers below them. Control, are you seeing this? Rodriguez asked, adjusting the sensors. The temperature gradients are shifting. These patterns don't match any natural formation. Wilson's voice came through, tense with realization. The thermal activity we detected earlier, it's not random. The whole underwater volcanic system is becoming unstable. Before Thompson could respond, a deep rumble shook the water around them. The Hydrocypian bioships suddenly broke formation, their crystalline structures showing signs of stress. All vessels, surface immediately, the Hydrocypian commander ordered. The thermal disturbances. A massive underwater explosion cut off the transmission. The competition zone erupted into chaos as ancient volcanic vents, disturbed by forces neither species had anticipated, began to awaken. Martinez, Thompson's voice was deadly calm. Forget the competition. We have a new mission. In the Leviathan's control pod, Martinez watched as both human and alien vessels scrambled to escape the growing disaster. Understanding, sir. Engaging rescue protocols. She turned to Rodriguez. Plot me a course through that chaos. It's time to show them what this ship was really built for. The Pacific seabed was tearing itself apart. Massive underwater landslides cascaded through the competition zone. As ancient magma chambers, disturbed by the combined activities of human and Hydrosapian vessels, ruptured in chain reactions. 3 Hydrosapian bioships trapped in Sector 7. Rodriguez called out, his hands flying over the sensor controls. The pressure waves from the eruption have compromised their crystalline structures. Martinez guided the Leviathan through a maze of superheated water columns, the vessel's adaptive hull flowing like mercury. Wilson, I need more power to the thermal shields. We're looking at temperatures that could cook us alive. Redirecting power from non-essential systems, Wilson's voice was steady despite the crisis. The snailfish adaptations are holding, but we're pushing way beyond the original specs. Through the quantum imaging system, they watched as one of the Hydrosapian vessels attempted to rescue its trapped companions. Its crystalline hull, designed for steady pressure states, began to fracture under the rapidly changing conditions. Their biology is working against them, Davidson observed from the surface. They evolved for deep-sea stability, not chaos. That's why we're going to save them, Martinez announced, already plotting an intercept course. Rodriguez, prep the emergency pressure chambers. Wilson, I need the hull to mimic their crystalline resonance frequency. Are you insane? Davidson's voice cracked. Matching their biotechnology could tear us apart. Trust the math. Wilson cut in. She was already modifying the Leviathan's transformation matrices. The snailfish adaptation doesn't just handle pressure. It can match any environmental condition. We just never had a reason to try. The Leviathan's hull began to shimmer, its surface taking on properties similar to the Hydrosapian vessels. As they approached the trapped aliens, the rescue became a dangerous dance between physics and engineering. First bioship secured, Martinez reported as their emergency chamber enveloped one of the damaged vessels. Their hull is stabilizing. Wait. She frowned at the readings. Something's wrong with the second ship. Their pressure regulation is failing completely. A Hydrosapian commander's voice crackled through the comm. Patterns of light conveying panic their translated words couldn't capture. Our regeneration systems are overloading. We cannot maintain structural integrity. Wilson, Martinez called out, remember what you said about the snailfish, about channeling pressure instead of fighting it. Yes, but Wilson stopped mid-sentence, understanding dawning. You want to teach them how to adapt. Martinez was already establishing a direct neural link with the Hydrosapian vessels through the Leviathan's interface, transmitting our pressure compensation algorithms now. Show them how to flow with the chaos instead of resisting it. The effect was immediate and stunning. The Hydrosapian bioship's crystalline structures began to pulse in a new rhythm, mimicking the Leviathan's adaptive patterns. Their hulls, previously rigid and fracturing, became fluid and resilient. It's working, Rodriguez exclaimed. They're learning to. Another explosion rocked the seabed, this one larger than before. A massive underwater landslide began to build, threatening to bury everything in its path. All vessels, emergency ascent, Thompson ordered from the surface. Negative, Martinez replied, turning the Leviathan to face the approaching wall of debris. If that landslide reaches the continental shelf, it could trigger tsunamis across the Pacific Rim. The Hydrosapian commander, their vessel now stabilized using human adaptation principles, moved alongside the Leviathan. Our bioships can generate containment fields, but not strong enough for this magnitude. Then we'll combine them, Martinez decided. Wilson, can you synchronize our field generators with their containment technology? Already on it, Wilson replied. Davidson, I need you to route every bit of power we've got to the structural integrity field. We're about to find out if humanity's best technology can work in harmony with alien biology. As the landslide bore down on them, human and alien vessels formed a line against nature's fury. The Leviathan's transformed hull pulsed in perfect rhythm with the Hydrocypian bioships, their combined technologies creating something entirely new. A perfect fusion of evolutionary adaptation and engineered innovation. Braced for impact, Martines ordered, her voice carrying the weight of two civilizations' hopes. Let's show the ocean what we can do together. The combined containment field held against the underwater avalanche, a shimmering barrier of human engineering and alien biotechnology. Inside the Leviathan's control pod, Martinez watched the pressure readings climb beyond anything their simulations had considered possible. Field integrity at 98%, Rodriguez reported, wonder in his voice. The Hydrocypian containment technology is actually strengthening our structural field instead of fighting it. Just like the snailfish adaptation, Wilson's voice crackled through the comm. Their evolutionary advantages combined with our adaptive engineering. It's creating something entirely new. The landslide's roar diminished as the combined fleet held their position, their technologies working in perfect harmony to redirect the flow away from the continental shelf. Above them, Admiral Thompson watched the sensor feeds with the Hydrocypian Warmaster. Your Lieutenant Commander's solution. Warmaster of Ixnil's patterns pulsed with what humans were learning to recognize as profound respect. It shouldn't have worked. Our bioships aren't designed to alter their fundamental operating principles. That's exactly why it did work, Thompson replied. We design our technology to change, to adapt. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we have to be. Deep below, the crisis was transforming into something else, a testament to both species' strengths. The Hydrocypian bioships, now operating with hybrid protocols, demonstrated unprecedented maneuverability. The Leviathan, enhanced by alien containment principles, achieved depths that neither species had thought possible. Final debris flow stabilizing, Martines announced. Beginning geological survey. She guided the Leviathan through a series of transforms that would have torn the ship apart hours earlier. Now, with their combined technologies, it moved like a living thing. Control, you need to see this. Rodriguez called up a holographic display of the seabed. The underwater landscape had been dramatically reshaped, revealing something that made both species fall silent. Are those structures? Davidson asked, leaning closer to his surface monitors. Ancient structures, the Hydrocypian chief scientist confirmed. We found similar ruins in other oceans, but never this intact. The landslide appears to have uncovered a prehistoric settlement. Martinez shared a look with her alien counterpart through the quantum imaging system. I guess neither of us can claim to be the first masters of Earth's oceans. In the Surface Command Center, Wilson was already analyzing the combined field data. The way our technologies interface during the crisis. It's revolutionary. The applications for deep-sea exploration, underwater construction, disaster prevention. Assuming, Thompson interjected, our friends are still interested in sharing technology. He turned to Warmaster Vixenil. I believe the original challenge involved exclusive rights to Earth's oceans. The Warmaster's crystalline form shifted, patterns displaying what could only be described as embarrassment. Perhaps we were hasty in our assumptions about surface-dwelling species. Your people have demonstrated mastery over the deep in ways we never considered possible. Then may I suggest an alternative arrangement? Thompson gestured to the displays showing human and alien vessels working in perfect coordination to secure the discovery site. The oceans are vast, and there's clearly much we can learn from each other. The next few hours saw the establishment of the Joint Deep Ocean Command, with Martinez and Wilson working alongside their Hydrocypian counterparts to draft preliminary protocols for shared research and development. The Leviathan was just the beginning, Davidson mused, watching teams of human and alien engineers excitedly comparing notes. Imagine what we'll build together. It's not about what we'll build, Martines corrected him, removing her neural interface helmet. It's about what we'll become. Two species, learning to adapt and grow together. As the sun set over the Pacific, the Leviathan and a Hydrocypian bioship surfaced in perfect synchronization, their hulls reflecting the golden light in ways that made it impossible to tell where human technology ended and alien biology began. They were something new, something neither species had dreamed possible. In the depths below, ancient ruins waited to be explored, promising mysteries that would challenge both civilizations. But now, they would face those challenges together, combining humanity's relentless drive to adapt with the Hydrosapiens' evolutionary mastery. The oceans had gained new guardians, and the galaxy had gained a powerful lesson. True mastery comes not from natural advantage or technological might, but from the wisdom to learn from each other and the courage to change.